The spotlight hit me like an interrogation lamp as Marcus dropped to one knee in the center of my parents' ballroom. Velvet box open, 3-carat diamond catching every eye in the room. 200 guests held their breath. My mother's face was radiant with triumph. My sister Emma clutched her champagne glass so hard I thought the stem would snap. I smiled serenely and said, "No." The word dropped into the silence like a stone into still water. Ripples of shock spread through the crowd. Marcus's face went from confident to confused to pale in the span of 3 seconds. "I'm sorry," I continued, my voice steady and clear enough to reach every corner of the room. "But I already mailed the ring back to your address 2 weeks ago. Certified mail. You should have received it by now." "What?" Marcus stammered, still on one knee, looking absurd. "Sophia, what are you talking about? This is the ring you gave me last month? The one you used to propose privately before asking to do it again properly at my birthday party?" I tilted my head, maintaining that same calm smile. "The one that belonged to your grandmother?" I returned it, with a note explaining that I knew about Emma. The silence shattered. Gasps erupted from every direction. My sister went white as bone china. My mother's voice cut through the chaos, shrill and commanding. "Sophia, what on earth are you doing? This is your birthday. Marcus came all this way. He came all this way to humiliate me," I said, turning to face her. "The same way you planned for me to be humiliated. The same way you've planned everything for the past 26 years. But in my mind, I was thinking 27 years. Because this was my second time living through this moment, and this time, I knew exactly what was supposed to happen next. Let me take you back to the beginning, or rather, the end that became a new beginning. I died on March 15th, 2024, at the age of 27. I died alone in a studio apartment in a bad part of town, my body not found for 3 days until my landlord came looking for rent. The coroner said it was a combination of malnutrition, pneumonia, and what they delicately termed failure to thrive. What they meant was that I'd given up, that I'd stopped fighting a battle I'd lost long ago. In that first life, I'd said yes when Marcus proposed at my birthday party. I'd said yes because my mother's eyes were shining with approval for the first time in my life, because my father actually looked at me instead of through me, because Emma was finally not the center of attention, and some petty, broken part of me wanted just one moment where I was the special one. The marriage lasted 8 months. 6 months in, I found Marcus in our bed with Emma. Not a drunken mistake, not a moment of weakness. A full-blown affair that had been going on since before the engagement, since before the first time he'd proposed, actually. Emma confessed it all during the divorce, laughing, as she told me how Marcus had always been hers, how the whole thing was a joke, a bet they'd made about whether he could really get me to say yes. My parents took Emma's side. Of course they did. My father paid for Marcus's lawyer. My mother testified that I'd been unstable and imagining things. I lost everything in the divorce. The apartment Marcus had convinced me to buy in both our names, using my inheritance from my grandmother, the car, even my grandmother's jewelry that I'd stupidly left in our shared safe deposit box. The year that followed was a blur of depression, poverty, and isolation. I'd quit my job at my father's company when I got engaged, at Marcus's insistence. "You won't need to work," he'd said. "I'll take care of you." No one would hire me after. My father had made sure to poison the well with every contact in our industry. I burned through my meager savings, lost my apartment, lost my will to keep going, and then I died, alone and unmourned, at 27 years old, except I woke up. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, in my old bed with the white lace canopy, and I was 17 years old. It was September 3rd, 2014, the first day of my senior year of high school. I could hear my mother downstairs yelling at Emma to hurry up, Emma's whining response that her hair wasn't ready, my father's newspaper rustling as he ignored them both. For 3 days, I thought I was losing my mind. I went through the motions of school, smiled when I was supposed to smile, and at night I locked myself in my bathroom and sobbed silently into a towel. I had 10 years of memories that no one else had. 10 years of knowledge about what was coming. On the 4th day, I decided to test it. There was a chemistry quiz that Friday. I remembered it because I'd gotten a B, the only B I'd gotten all year, And my mother had grounded me for a month while Emma, who'd failed English, got a shopping trip to make her feel better. I didn't study, I just wrote down the answers I remembered. Perfect score. Then I bet my lunch money on a football game I knew the outcome of. Then I avoided a corner where a car was going to jump the curb. Then I carefully, precisely began to plan. Because I remembered everything. Every betrayal, every humiliation, every carefully constructed trap my family had set for me over the years. And this time, I wasn't going to walk into a single one. My family, my mother Catherine, my father Richard, and my younger sister Emma had never loved me. I don't say that for sympathy, it's simply a fact as immutable as gravity. I've spent years in both lifetimes trying to understand why. I was the firstborn, the child they'd supposedly wanted, but from my earliest memories, there was always something wrong with me in their eyes, something insufficient. Emma arrived when I was 2, and whatever small affection might have existed evaporated. She was beautiful where I was plain, charming where I was shy, effortless where I had to struggle. Or at least that's the story they told so often it became truth. The reality was simpler and uglier. My mother had never recovered from my grandmother's disapproval of her marriage to my father. My paternal grandmother, Eleanor Ashford, had been a formidable woman from old money, and she'd thought my mother was a grasping social climber. Which, to be fair, she was. When I was born, my grandmother doted on me, her first grandchild carrying the Ashford name. I was supposed to be her legacy. But my grandmother died when I was 7, and she left everything to me, not to my father, not to my mother, to me, her granddaughter, in an ironclad trust that I would receive at age 25, $20 million plus a property portfolio worth another 30. From the day the will was read, my parents hated me. They couldn't touch the money. My grandmother's lawyers had seen to that. But they could make sure I never enjoyed it. They could make sure I grew up so broken, so desperate for their approval, that I'd hand it all over the moment I gained access. And in my first life, that's exactly what happened. I gave Marcus access to my accounts 3 weeks after my 25th birthday. 60 days later, it was all gone, transferred through a series of shell corporations my father had set up. By the time I realized what had happened, the money was offshore and untouchable. My parents retired to the south of France. Emma bought a penthouse in Manhattan. Marcus paid off his family's debts and started a venture capital firm. And I got nothing but their laughter. This time would be different. This time, I had something they could never anticipate. I knew all their moves before they made them. The years between 17 and 23 passed in a careful dance. I had to pretend to be the same broken, eager-to-please Sophia they expected while quietly, methodically, building a completely different future. I stayed in my father's good graces by appearing to work at his commercial real estate firm after college just as I had before. But this time, I was copying files, learning which of his deals were legitimate and which were fraudulent, documenting everything. I smiled through family dinners where they mocked me, endured Emma's endless cruelties and my mother's casual dismissals, let them think I was the same pathetic doormat. But I was also taking night classes in business and finance, building relationships with my grandmother's old lawyers, the ones who'd protected me before. Reaching out to the few people in my grandmother's social circle who'd actually liked her and had watched with disapproval as my parents isolated me. I was careful. So careful. Never revealing too much. Never pushing too hard. The hardest part was Marcus. He appeared right on schedule in January of my 23rd year, exactly as he had before. A friend of Emma's, charming and handsome, working in investment banking. I watched him flirt with Emma at a family dinner, watched her preen and posture, then watched a week later as he randomly ran into me at a coffee shop near my office. Sophia, right? Emma's sister? That same smile. That same calculated warmth. Every instinct screamed at me to throw my coffee in his face, to tell him I knew exactly what he was. But I couldn't, not yet. If I deviated too far from the pattern, they'd know something was wrong. They'd change their plans. I needed them to follow the script right up until the moment I flipped it on them. So I blushed. I stammered. I let him ask me out. Let him sweep me into a romance that felt like a fairy tale and was actually a prison being built around me brick by brick. The difference was that this time I knew what the prison looked like. I knew all the locks, and I was keeping my own set of keys. Marcus proposed the first time in June, 3 months before my 24th birthday. Private, on a beach at sunset, exactly as before. The ring was beautiful, his grandmother's emerald-cut diamond, which I later learned he'd actually bought at an estate sale for a fraction of its value. I said yes because I was supposed to say yes, because the plan required it. But I took the ring to an appraiser the next day, got it authenticated and insured under my own name, documented everything. And when Marcus suggested we wait to announce it, do it properly at my birthday party where everyone could celebrate with us, I agreed with wide-eyed innocence. That's so romantic, I breathed. My whole family will be there. Exactly, he said, and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. It'll be perfect. I knew why he wanted the public proposal. In my first life, the spectacle had locked me in. The social pressure, my parents' approval, the inability to back out without humiliating myself in front of 200 people. It had been a trap disguised as romance. This time, the trap was going to snap on different prey. For the next 3 months, I played my part flawlessly. The blushing bride-to-be, glowing with happiness, making wedding plans. I had dinner with Marcus's family and pretended not to notice his mother's calculating eyes assessing my worth. Went dress shopping with Emma, who made snide comments about how I'd need extra alterations since I didn't have her figure. Listened to my mother's endless critiques of every choice I made. And in secret, I was preparing. I hired a private investigator, not anyone local, but a firm 3 states away with no connections to my father's network. They confirmed what I already knew. Marcus and Emma had been sleeping together since before his first coffee shop accident. The PI got photos, videos, hotel records. Emma's credit card statement showed hundreds of charges at the same boutique hotels Marcus expensed for business travel. I also confirmed what I'd learned too late in my first life. Marcus wasn't a successful investment banker. He was drowning in debt. His family's manufacturing business had gone bankrupt 5 years ago, and he'd been propping up his lifestyle with credit cards and loans. He'd targeted me specifically on Emma's suggestion because of my trust fund. Emma knew I'd get access in a year. She'd done the math. The plan had always been, Marcus marries me, gets access to my money, bleeds the accounts dry, and then divorces me for Emma. My parents would help. They'd already consulted lawyers about how to structure things to maximize what they could take. It was elegant, really. Sociopathic, but elegant. Except this time, I was going to let them think everything was going according to plan, right up until the moment it all imploded. My 24th birthday fell on a Saturday in September. My parents had rented out the ballroom of the Ashford Hotel, the hotel my grandmother had owned, which had passed into the trust. The irony of them using my inheritance venue to spring their trap on me wasn't lost on anyone, least of all me. 200 guests. Everyone from my parents' social circle, my father's business associates, Emma's shallow friends, Marcus's family, a string quartet, a 5-tier cake, an ice sculpture. My mother had spared no expense. Literally, since I learned later it was all charged to credit cards she planned to have me pay off once I gave Marcus access to my accounts. I wore a white dress, my mother's choice, Emma's modification. "You'll look so virginal," Emma had cooed while adjusting the neckline lower than I wanted. "Marcus will love it." The party started at 7. By 8, I'd made the rounds, accepted birthday wishes from people who barely knew me, and taken my place at the family table. My mother was in her element, holding court. My father was networking. Emma was radiant in a red dress that cost more than my car, her eyes following Marcus's every move. At 9, the lights dimmed. The quartet stopped playing. My father took the microphone. "Everyone, if I could have your attention," he began. His voice warm with a pride I'd never heard directed at me in private. "Tonight isn't just about celebrating Sophia's birthday. It's about celebrating the beginning of a wonderful new chapter in her life." My heart was hammering. This was it. The moment everything had gone wrong the first time. The moment everything was going to go right this time. My father gestured to Marcus, who stood with perfect timing, reaching into his jacket pocket. The crowd murmured with anticipation. Emma's smile was strained at the edges. Marcus made his way to the center of the floor. The spotlight found him. He beckoned me forward, and I went, keeping my expression soft and surprised, the way a woman who didn't know what was coming might look. "Sophia," Marcus said, his voice projecting beautifully. He'd probably practiced. From the moment I met you, I knew you were special. These past 6 months have been the happiest of my life. Lies. Every word, carefully calculated lies. But the this crowd sighed appreciatively. I can't imagine my future without you in it, he continued, lowering himself to one knee. The velvet box opened with a soft click. The diamond caught the light. Sophia Marie Ashford, will you marry me? 200 people waited for my answer. My mother's eyes were gleaming. My father looked smug. Emma's knuckles were white around her champagne flute. I let the moment stretch, let the anticipation build, let Marcus's confident smile start to waver just slightly. Then I said, no. The aftermath was spectacular. Marcus stayed frozen on one knee, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The crowd's shock was a physical presence, a collective gasp that seemed to suck the air from the room. I'm sorry, I said again, my voice clear and calm. But I already mailed the ring back to your address 2 weeks ago. Certified mail. The one you gave me in June when you proposed privately, I returned it, with a note explaining that I knew about Emma. Emma made a strangled sound. Several heads swiveled toward her. My mother recovered first, her voice cutting through the chaos. Sophia, what on earth are you doing? This is your birthday. Marcus came all this way. He came all this way to humiliate me, I interrupted. Alban, the same way you planned for me to be humiliated. The same way you've planned everything. I turned to face the crowd, these 200 witnesses who'd come expecting a romantic spectacle and were getting something else entirely. Most of you don't know me, I said. I'm the daughter who doesn't quite fit. The sister who isn't as pretty or charming. The one my parents tolerate because I paused, let it hang. Well, because they have to. Sophia, that's enough, my father barked, moving toward me. Is it? I kept my eyes on the crowd. Because I think it's not nearly enough. I think 24 years of not being enough deserves at least 5 minutes of truth. I pulled out my phone. I'd prepared this, rehearsed it, made sure every piece of evidence was queued up and ready. Marcus and Emma have been having an affair for 8 months, I said simply. Since before he and I started dating. Since before he proposed. This whole thing. I gestured at the elaborate setup. The romantic lighting, the expectant crowd, was theater. A show designed to publicly commit me to a marriage that would give him access to my trust fund, which I turn 25 next year, if anyone was wondering about the timing. You're insane, Emma hissed, finally finding her voice. You've always been jealous of me. Here's a photo from the Riverside Inn dated March 15th, I said, swiping through my phone and holding up an image of Marcus and Emma in an embrace outside a hotel room. And here's one from April 3rd at the Grandview Hotel, May 22nd at a bed and breakfast in Vermont. Nice weekend getaway, by the way. Very romantic. The room erupted. People surging forward to look, others pulling out. Their own phones, a few making for the exits. Marcus finally stood up, the ring box dangling uselessly from his hand. You bitch, he snarled, all pretense of charm evaporating. You vindictive little... Careful, I said softly. There are cameras everywhere. This is being recorded. Because it was. I'd hired a videographer, told my mother it was to capture the special moment. The cameras were running, catching everything. This moment would be preserved forever, not my humiliation, but theirs. My father had reached me now, his face purple with rage. You will apologize right now. You will tell everyone this is a misunderstanding, but it's not a misunderstanding, Dad, and I'm not going to apologize for refusing to marry a con artist who was planning to steal my inheritance. I looked at him steadily. The inheritance you've been trying to steal since grandmother died. His hand rose. I saw it coming. The same backhand that had caught me across the face a dozen times in my first life when I displeased him. But this time I was ready. I stepped back and his swing met only air as a dozen people gasped. And there it is, I said quietly. The real Richard Ashford. Not the successful businessman, not the devoted father. Just a man who hates his daughter because his mother saw through him and made sure he couldn't touch her money. Security was moving in now, hotel security, who I'd briefed beforehand, who had been waiting for my signal. They positioned themselves between me and my family, a barrier of professional calm in the chaos. Ms. Ashford has asked that the party be concluded, the head of security announced. We're going to need everyone to begin making their way to the exits in an orderly fashion. But no one was moving in an orderly fashion. People were clustered in groups, phones out, voices raised. I caught fragments of conversation. Always knew something was off about that family. Poor girl, can you imagine? The sister and the fiancé, how trashy. Emma was crying now, mascara running, red dress suddenly looking garish instead of glamorous. Marcus had disappeared into the crowd, probably looking for the fastest exit. My mother stood frozen. Her perfect hostess smile cracked beyond repair, and my father stared at me with such pure hatred that if looks could kill, I would have dropped dead on the spot. You've ruined everything, he said, his voice low and venomous. Everything. Do you understand what you've done? Yes, I said simply. I've saved myself. The week that followed was a masterclass in controlled chaos. The video from the party went viral within hours. Someone in the crowd had streamed parts of it, and by morning it was all over social media. Birthday proposal. Reject was trending. Think pieces appeared about toxic families and gold diggers. Marcus and Emma were being eviscerated in the comments. I stayed at a hotel, not the Ashford, but a boutique place across town. I'd moved my essential belongings out of my apartment 2 weeks earlier, anticipating that my parents would try to lock me out. I was right. When I sent a moving company with police escort to retrieve the rest, they found the locks changed and my room ransacked. Most of my things were destroyed. They'd even ripped up photos of my grandmother. It confirmed everything I needed to know about the path forward. I met with my grandmother's lawyers on Monday morning. The senior partner, Gerald Morrison, was in his 70s, sharp as a tack, and had been waiting for this meeting for 17 years. Your grandmother knew, he said without preamble. She knew exactly what kind of people your parents were. That's why she structured the trust the way she did. She was protecting you from them. I wish she'd protected me sooner, I said, and my voice cracked despite my best efforts. Gerald's expression softened. She did what she could. The trust was ironclad. They can't touch it, can't contest it, can't claim any of it. When you turn 25, it's yours free and clear. But Eleanor also included provisions she never told you about. He slid a folder across the desk. I opened it with shaking hands. Your grandmother established a separate account for you, Gerald continued. $2 million accessible immediately in the event that you needed to escape your family before the main trust matured. She hoped you'd never need it, but she prepared for the possibility. I stared at the bank statements, the account that had been sitting there all along, waiting. $2 million, more than enough to start over, to be free. There's more, Gerald said. Your grandmother gave me very specific instructions to follow if certain conditions were met. One of those conditions was evidence that your family was attempting to defraud you. Based on what you've told me and the documentation you've provided, we've met that threshold. He pulled out another folder, this one much thicker. We're going to pursue criminal charges, he said. Against Marcus for fraud and conspiracy? Against your father for conspiracy and embezzlement? We've been auditing his business dealings, and there's significant evidence he's been stealing from his own company. Against your mother as an accessory. Emma's involvement is murkier, but we'll see what the prosecutor says. I sat back, letting it wash over me. In my first life, I'd died alone and unmourned. In this life, I was going to watch them face justice. How long? I asked. Months, maybe a year, Gerald said. These things take time. But Sophia, you need to understand. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. They're going to fight. They're going to drag your name through the mud. They're going to try to paint you as the villain. Let them try, I said. The girl who died alone was gone. The woman sitting in this office had already survived the worst they could do. I have nothing left to lose. No, said Gerald said with a slight smile. You have everything to gain. The criminal investigation moved faster than expected. It turned out that my father's fraudulent business dealings were even more extensive than I'd known. He'd been running a Ponzi-style scheme with his real estate investments, using new client money to pay returns to old clients. When the FBI raided his office in October, they found evidence of over $15 million in fraud spanning 6 years. My mother was caught up in it. She'd knowingly signed documents, transferred funds, acted as a go-between with clients. The prosecutor offered her a deal: testify against my father and serve 3 years, or go to trial alongside him and risk 15. She took the deal, then tried to call me. I didn't answer. Emma avoided criminal charges. She was judged to be an affair partner rather than a conspirator in the fraud. But the social fallout destroyed her. Every friend dropped her. Her modeling aspirations evaporated. No agency wanted the girl from the viral birthday betrayal video. She lost her apartment when my parents' assets were frozen. Last I heard, she was working retail and living with an ex-boyfriend who delighted in reminding her how far she'd fallen. I felt nothing when I heard that. Not satisfaction, not sympathy, nothing. She'd helped plan my destruction with the casual cruelty of someone who'd never valued me as human. Whatever happened to her now was her own doing. Marcus was arrested in November trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands. He'd liquidated everything he could and made a run for it. Conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted theft, a string of unpaid debts that added up to criminal charges. He was denied bail. His trial was set for the following spring. I didn't attend. I had better things to do. My 25th birthday arrived on a Tuesday. No party this time, no crowd of witnesses, just me, Gerald Morrison, and a notary in a law office as I signed the papers that transferred full control of my grandmother's trust to me. $20 million in liquid assets, another $30 million in property, 2 office buildings in Manhattan, a shopping complex in Chicago, the Ashford Hotel where my engagement had imploded, and my grandmother's house, a beautiful Victorian estate on the coast of Maine that I'd visited exactly twice as a child before my parents cut off contact with my grandmother's side of the family. "What will you do?" Gerald asked as I looked at the portfolio, this enormous weight of responsibility and freedom. "First," I said, "I'm going to the house in Maine. I want to see it, really see it, without my parents hovering." "And after?" I thought about my first life, the studio apartment where I died, the years of poverty and isolation, the feeling of being erased from existence, unwanted and unmourned. "I'm going to build something," I said. "Something that matters." "Your grandmother would be proud," Gerald said softly. I hoped. That was true. I hoped she was somewhere watching this second chance I'd been given, this impossible gift of foreknowledge and rebirth. I hoped she knew I wasn't going to waste it. The house in Maine was everything I'd remembered and more. 3 stories of Victorian elegance, towers and gables and wraparound porches sitting on 5 acres of private coastline. My grandmother had bought it in the 1960s as a young bride, had raised my father here before his character became clear, and she'd distanced herself from him. I walked through rooms full of furniture covered in white sheets, past paintings of ancestors I'd never known, up staircases that creaked in a friendly way. I found my grandmother's bedroom, her hairbrush still on the vanity, a book marked with a ribbon on the nightstand. In her closet, behind a false panel I remembered her showing me when I was 6, I found her journals. Decades of them, leather-bound books filled with her elegant handwriting. I took them to the window seat in her bedroom and began to read. "If you're reading this, Sophia," the first page of the most recent journal said, "then I'm gone, and you're finally free of them. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better while I was alive. I'm sorry I didn't see clearly enough soon enough how damaged Richard was, how toxic Catherine would become. By the time I understood, the legal options for removing you from their custody were limited. They'd never abused you physically where anyone could see, and emotional abuse isn't enough for the courts. So I did what I could. I locked up the money. I built walls they couldn't breach. I created escape routes for you, and I prayed. I'm not a religious woman, but I prayed that you would be strong enough to use them. The house is yours now. It's always been meant for you. Make it a home. Make it a fortress. Make it whatever you need it to be. And know that somewhere in whatever comes after, I'm watching over you and cheering you on. And that you are not what they said you were. You are my granddaughter. You are an Ashford. You are strong and brilliant and worthy of love. Don't let them convince you otherwise. With all my love and hope, Eleanor." I sat in that window seat and cried. For the grandmother I'd lost too soon. For the first life I'd wasted believing their lies. For the second chance I'd been given to see the truth. When I was done crying, I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the Atlantic Ocean stretching to the horizon. Time to build something that mattered. I spent 6 months in Maine, renovating the house and planning my future. I hired local contractors, got involved in the community, started understanding the property portfolio I'd inherited. The Ashford Hotel in particular fascinated me. It was profitable but underperforming, managed by people my father had appointed who'd been skimming money for years. I fired them all in February and hired a new management team. By June, revenues were up 40%. I started looking at the other properties, finding inefficiencies, corruption, missed opportunities. My grandmother had been a sharp businesswoman, but she'd been in her 80s when she died, unable to provide the active oversight the properties needed. I could provide that oversight now. I had an MBA I'd earned in my first life, years of experience working in my father's company learning the real estate business, and the gift of foreknowledge about market trends for the next 3 years. I started buying property, residential buildings in neighborhoods I knew were about to gentrify, commercial real estate in cities about to boom. I invested in tech startups that I remembered going public, biotech companies that would develop blockbuster drugs, green energy firms before the sector exploded. By my 26th birthday, the trust had grown to $75 million. By 27, $120 million. I was wealthy beyond anything my parents had dreamed of, beyond what even my grandmother had imagined. But money wasn't the point. Freedom was the point. Security was the point. The ability to never be vulnerable to people like them ever again. I also started a foundation, the Eleanor Ashford Foundation for Family Justice, dedicated to helping young adults escape abusive family situations. We provided legal support, housing assistance, job training, therapy, everything I'd needed and hadn't had. The applications poured in, thousands of them, from people with stories like mine. Families who saw them as resources to be exploited, parents who viewed their children as retirement plans, siblings who bullied and betrayed. I hired staff, lawyers, therapists, case managers. We helped hundreds of people in the first year alone, and slowly, carefully, I started to heal. My father went to trial in the spring of my 26th year. I attended every day of it, sitting in the gallery where he could see me, where he was forced to face the daughter he'd tried to destroy. The prosecution's case was damning. Client after client testified about money lost, retirement savings evaporated, lives ruined. My mother testified, her voice thin and defeated, outlining how my father had orchestrated everything. The FBI agent who'd led the investigation walked the jury through the paper trail of fraud, and then I testified. I told them about growing up in a house where love was transactional, about a father who saw me only as a future ATM, about the plans I'd overheard, the schemes I'd uncovered, the systematic attempt to position me for exploitation. I explained the engagement party, showed the evidence of Marcus and Emma's affair, detailed how everything was designed to make me vulnerable. My father's lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, bitter, making up stories for revenge. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury didn't even deliberate for a full day, guilty on all counts. 22 years in federal prison as they led. Him away in handcuffs, my father looked at me one last time. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was empty, hollowed out, the look of a man who'd finally realized he'd lost everything. I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just the quiet certainty that justice had been served. My mother served her 3 years. She got out last month, 55 years old and unemployable, living in a subsidized apartment with no assets and no prospects. She tried to call me once after her release. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail asking for money. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. Marcus's trial came later, in the summer. He'd spent months in jail awaiting it, unable to make bail, his family having disowned him after the extent of his debts came to light. The prosecution charged him with conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted theft, and a string of other crimes related to his debts and business dealings. I didn't attend his trial. I didn't need to see him again. But I heard he tried to plead out, offered to testify against Emma in exchange for a lighter sentence. The prosecutor declined. Emma wasn't charged with anything criminal, and his testimony wasn't worth much. He got 8 years. I heard he was serving them in a medium-security prison in Pennsylvania, sharing a cell with a forger. I felt as much about that as I'd felt about everything else. Nothing. He was a stranger who'd tried to hurt me. Now he was facing consequences. That was the end of the story. Emma was the only one who stayed free, but her life was its own kind of prison. The last time I heard about her, through mutual acquaintances I'd kept at arm's length, she was working as an administrative assistant and living alone. She'd tried to reach out to me twice, once through a friend, once through a lawyer, both times asking for money. I said no both times. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. She'd made her choices. She'd participated in a plan to destroy me. That I'd escaped and she was facing the consequences of her actions wasn't my responsibility to fix. I had my own life to build. Now, at 28 years old, I'm sitting in my grandmother's house in Maine, looking out at the Atlantic as the sun sets in shades of gold and crimson. The house is fully renovated now, a home instead of a museum. The Eleanor Ashford Foundation has helped over 1,000 people escape abusive situations. My property portfolio continues to grow, intelligently managed and ethically run. I've made friends, real friends. People who value me for myself rather than my money. I've traveled. I've learned to paint, badly but enthusiastically. I've rescued 3 cats who keep me company as I work. I've built a life that's mine, free of the shadows of people who never deserved the power they had over me. Sometimes I wonder why I was given this second chance. What cosmic mechanism allowed me to die and be reborn with my memories intact? Was it divine intervention? A glitch? In reality? The universe balancing some karmic equation? I don't know. I'll probably never know. What I do know is that I didn't waste it. I took the gift of foreknowledge and used it to save myself, to build something meaningful, to help others who were drowning the way I drowned. In my first life, I died at 27, alone and unmourned. In this life, I'm thriving at 28, surrounded by people who genuinely care about me, doing work that matters. The girl who said yes to Marcus's proposal at her birthday party is gone. She died in that studio apartment, broken and defeated. The woman who said no, who mailed back the ring, who burned down the trap they'd built for her and walked away from the ashes, she's the one who survived. She's the one who won. I get a letter sometimes, forwarded through my lawyer. My mother writes from her subsidized apartment, long rambling screeds about how I've abandoned family, how ungrateful I am, how I owe them for raising me. She seems to genuinely believe that I should feel guilty, that I should open my wallet and my heart to people who spent 24 years planning my destruction. I don't respond to the letters. I file them away in a folder labeled evidence in case I ever need them, but I don't read them more than once. Emma tried social media, posting vague things about family betrayal and sisters who turned their backs. I blocked her on everything. Let her tell her version of events to whoever will listen. The truth is documented, recorded, prosecuted in a court of law. Anyone who wants to know what really happened can find out easily enough. My father writes too from prison. His letters are different, not pleading, but coldly analytical. He dissects his mistakes, the ways he underestimated me, the errors in his planning. It's like he sees his own downfall as a business case study rather than a moral failing. Sometimes he adds notes at the end. You played this well, or I didn't see this move coming. Those letters I burn. I don't need his approval, not even in the form of respecting me as an adversary. I don't need anything from him at all. The only family I have now is the one I've chosen. Gerald Morrison, my grandmother's lawyer, who's become a trusted advisor and friend. The staff at the foundation, dedicated people who share my mission. The network of people I've helped, who've gone on to build their own lives and pay it forward by helping others. And my grandmother, who I never got to thank, but who I honor every day by being the woman she believed I could become. On the first anniversary of turning down Marcus's proposal, I threw a party at the Ashford Hotel. Not in the ballroom where everything had imploded. I'd had that renovated into something else, a modern event space without the ghosts, but in the hotel's private dining room, intimate and warm. I invited 20 people, the friends I'd made over the past year, all people who knew my story and valued me. Anyway, Gerald Morrison and his wife, the director of my foundation, a few of the people we'd helped who'd become friends, the contractors who'd renovated the main house and had become like family. No one from my original family was invited. No one from my old life except Gerald. We had dinner, good wine, and better conversation. Around 10, someone asked me to give a speech, the way the host at a birthday party might. I stood, glass in hand, and looked around at these people who'd chosen to be in my life. A year ago, I said, I stood in the ballroom of this hotel and said no to a marriage proposal. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. It was supposed to be the moment I became part of a family that loved me. The room was quiet, attentive. Instead, it became the day I started being honest about the family I actually had. A family that saw me as a resource, a tool, a means to an end. I paused. And in being honest about that, I freed myself to find the family I actually needed. I looked around the room. Every person here is someone who sees me as a human being, someone who values honesty over exploitation, kindness over cruelty, authenticity over performance. You're the family I chose, and I'm grateful beyond words, Spuds, that you chose me back. Gerald raised his glass. To Eleanor's granddaughter, he said, who inherited more than money, who inherited strength. To Sophia, someone else called. To second chances, another voice added. We toasted, and I felt something settle in my chest. Peace. Real, genuine peace. The kind that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, with exactly the people who are meant to be in your life. I still have dreams sometimes about my first life. The studio apartment, the cold, the feeling of giving up. I wake up gasping, heart racing, convinced for a moment that this is the dream and that horror was reality. But then I open my eyes to my bedroom in Maine, to sunlight streaming through the windows, to the sound of waves and seagulls and wind in the trees. To a life that's mine, built on my terms, free of the people who tried to break me. Those dreams are getting rarer now. The memories of my first life are fading, becoming less visceral. I remember the lessons, the betrayals, the warning signs, the ways people reveal their true nature. But the emotional weight of it is lifting. I'm becoming someone new, not the broken girl who died at 27, not even the calculating young woman who orchestrated her family's downfall. Someone else. Someone who's learned that revenge, while satisfying, isn't as fulfilling as building something positive. Someone who understands that the best way to heal from abuse is to help others escape it. Someone who's genuinely happy. My 29th birthday is next month. I'm planning something quiet, a dinner with friends, maybe a weekend trip somewhere beautiful. Nothing elaborate, nothing that requires witnesses or spectacle. Just a celebration of having made it through another year of this strange, wonderful second life. And if Marcus or Emma or my mother or my father'd ever get out, ever try to come back into my life, ever think they have some claim on me, I'll do what I did at that birthday party 2 years ago. I'll say no, and I'll mean it, because I've learned the most important lesson. I don't owe anyone my presence, my money, my forgiveness, or my pain. I don't owe anyone a relationship just because we share DNA. I don't owe anyone a second chance to hurt me. I owe myself safety, happiness, peace, and I've built a life that gives me all three. The foundation is expanding. We're opening offices in 3 new states, hiring more staff, helping more people. Last month, we helped a young man escape a family that was forcing him to work 18-hour days at their restaurant while keeping all his wages. We helped a woman whose parents had stolen her identity and racked up hundreds of thousands in debt in her name. We helped a teenager whose siblings were systematically destroying her college applications because they didn't want her to get above her raising. Each case is different. Each person's pain is unique. But the underlying pattern is always the same. Family members who see their relative not as a person, but as a thing to be used. I understand that pattern intimately. I lived it. I died from it. And then I was reborn to escape it. Sometimes survivors ask me how I did it, how I found the strength to walk away, to burn bridges, to watch my family face consequences without flinching. I tell them the truth. I'd already lost everything once. Once you've hit absolute bottom, once you've died alone and unmourned, there's a freedom in that. You learn that you can survive anything, that you're stronger than you ever imagined. I tell them that foreknowledge helped. Knowing exactly what my family was planning made it easier to counter. But most people don't have that advantage. So instead, I teach them to trust their instincts, to document everything, to build support networks outside their family, to remember that DNA doesn't obligate you to tolerate abuse. And I tell them what my grandmother told me in those journals I found. You are not what they said you were. You are worthy of love. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Last week, I got a letter from Marcus, forwarded through 3 lawyers to make sure he couldn't track my actual location. It was short. Sophia, I know you won't forgive me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself. But I need you to know that you were right about me, about Emma, about all of it. I was everything you accused me of being at that party. Prison gives you time to think. Too much time. I've thought a lot about the man I was, the things I did. The person I hurt most was you, and you deserved none of it. You were always kind to me, patient, genuine, and I repaid that by treating you like a mark, like something to plod, be used and discarded. I told myself it was just business, just survival. But that's not true. It was cruelty, calculated, deliberate cruelty. I don't know what happened to you after that night. I'm guessing you're doing well. You always were smarter than any of us. I hope you're happy. I hope you found someone who treats you the way you deserve to be treated. I have 4 more years here. After that, I don't know. But I wanted you to know that you were right to say no, right to walk away, right to protect yourself. I'm sorry for all of it, for whatever that's worth. Marcus. I read the letter twice. Then I put it in a drawer with the others and went back to work. Was he sincere? Maybe. Prison changes people, and 4 years is a long time to sit with your mistakes. Or maybe it was another manipulation, a play for sympathy or forgiveness or reconciliation that might lead to financial support when he got out. I didn't know. I didn't care enough to figure it out. The Marcus who wrote that letter was a stranger. The Marcus I'd known, in both lives, was a con artist who'd tried to steal my future. Whether he'd genuinely changed or was running a longer con was irrelevant. I wasn't going to be part of his life either way. I'd said no once. I'd say it again if I had to. That door was closed, locked, and welded shut. There's a question I get asked sometimes by people who know my story. Do you regret the public confrontation? Do you wish you'd handled it more privately? The answer is no, not even a little bit. In my first life, they destroyed me quietly. No witnesses, no documentation, just a slow, systematic dismantling of my identity and resources until there was nothing left. And when I tried to tell people what happened, no one believed me. My parents were too respected, Marcus too charming, Emma too sympathetic. The public confrontation at my birthday party changed everything. It created witnesses, documentation, a narrative that couldn't be quietly rewritten. When they tried to claim I was lying or crazy, hundreds of people could say, "No, I was there, I saw the evidence. She was telling the truth." That mattered. It mattered in the criminal trials. It mattered in the civil suits. It mattered in every interaction that followed when they tried to spin their version of events and ran into the brick wall of public knowledge. But more than that, it mattered to me. Standing up in front of 200 people and saying no, saying I knew what they'd done, saying I wouldn't be their victim anymore, that was transformative. That was powerful. That was the moment I stopped being the person they'd made me and became the person I chose to be. So, no regrets about the confrontation. If anything, I wish I'd gone public sooner. Wish I'd trusted myself earlier. Wish I'd been brave enough in my first life to do what I did in my second. But that's the gift of rebirth, isn't it? The chance to make different choices, to be braver, to be stronger, to win. Sometimes people ask me if I ever think about forgiveness, if I ever consider reaching out to my family, offering reconciliation, trying to build bridges. The answer is always no. Forgiveness isn't a requirement for healing, and reconciliation isn't possible when one party has never acknowledged wrongdoing, never apologized sincerely, never changed. My family still believes they were entitled to my money. My mother's letters make that clear. She genuinely thinks I owe her, that raising me created a debt I'm obligated to pay. My father's prison letters show the same mentality. Emma's social media posts frame herself as the victim of my betrayal. None of them have ever said, "What we did was wrong. We hurt you. We're sorry." And without that, there's nothing to build on. Forgiveness would just be giving them another opportunity to hurt me. Reconciliation would be walking back into a trap. So, I don't forgive them. I don't carry anger or hatred for them either. That would give them too much power over my emotional life. I feel nothing for them. They're strangers who once had access to my life and no longer do. They're cautionary tales I share with the Foundation's clients. They're closed chapters in a story I've moved beyond. That's not coldness, that's health. My 29th birthday arrives on a crisp September day. I wake up in Maine, make coffee, and take it out onto the porch to watch the sunrise. The ocean is calm, painted in shades of pink and gold. Seagulls call overhead. It's peaceful, it's perfect. My phone buzzes with birthday messages from friends, funny memes, heartfelt notes, plans for dinner tonight. No one from my original family tries to contact me. They learned years ago that I've blocked them on every platform, that messages sent through lawyers get filed and ignored, that showing up in person will result in a restraining order. Around 9, a delivery arrives. A package from Gerald Morrison, who's retired now but still keeps in touch. Inside is a leather journal, elegant and expensive, with a note. Sophia, your grandmother kept journals her whole life. I thought you might enjoy continuing the tradition. Record this beautiful life you've built. You've earned every moment of it. Happy birthday, Gerald. I run my fingers over the leather, thinking about my grandmother's journals hidden behind the false panel in her closet. Decades of her life, her thoughts, her hopes for me. A legacy preserved in ink. Maybe it's time to start my own legacy. To document this second life, not for anyone else, but for myself. A reminder of how far I've come. A record of the person I've become. I open to the first page and uncap my pen. My name is Sophia Eleanor Ashford, I write. I died at 27 and woke up at 17 with memories of everything that had happened and everything that would come. This is the story of what I did with that second chance. The words flow easily, like they've been waiting for this moment. I write about the first life, the death, the rebirth. I write about the years of carefully playing my role while building a different future. I write about the birthday party, the confrontation, the trials, the aftermath. I write about who I was and who I've become. By the time I finish, the sun is high in the sky and I've filled 20 pages. My hand aches, my heart feels light. There will be more to write, more years to document, more stories to tell, more life to live and record. But this is a start, a foundation, like everything else I've built. That evening, I have dinner with friends at a restaurant in town. We eat lobster and drink wine and laugh until our sides hurt. Someone brings a cake, chocolate, my favorite, with 29 candles that take 3 people to blow out. Make a wish, they chorus. I close my eyes and think about wishes. In my first life, I would have wished to be loved by my family, to be valued, to matter. In this life, I've learned that some wishes are better left unmade, that some things aren't worth wanting, that sometimes the greatest gift is learning to want different things. So, I wish for this. More years like this one, more friends like these, more mornings watching the sunrise, more work that matters, more chances to help people who are where I once was, more life lived on my terms, free and full and mine. I blow out the candles, everyone cheers, we eat cake and trade stories and stay until the restaurant is closing. When we finally spill out onto the street, the night is cool and clear, stars bright overhead. Best birthday? One of my friends asks, linking her arm through mine. Best birthday, I confirm. And I mean it. No proposal, no betrayal, no trap sprung, just genuine celebration with genuine people in a life I've genuinely built. This is what winning looks like. Later that night, back in my house, I add one more entry to my new journal. I spent so long in my first life believing my family's narrative, that I was difficult, ungrateful, not good enough. It took dying and being reborn to realize the truth. There was nothing wrong with me. There was everything wrong with them. The greatest gift of this second life hasn't been the foreknowledge or the money or the revenge. It's been the clarity, the absolute certainty that I deserved better, that I always deserved better, that their treatment of me was a reflection of their character, not mine. I wish I could go back and tell the girl I was in my first life, you're going to die, but you're also going to be reborn, and the second time, you're going to win. You're going to build something beautiful. You're going to help thousands of people. You're going to be happy. Just hold on. Just survive. Your second chance is coming. But I can't tell her that. She's gone. She died alone in that apartment, and she's not coming back. All I can do is live well enough for both of us, be brave enough for both of us, win thoroughly enough for both of us. And I am. I will. I have. To the girl I was, you deserved better. To the woman I've become, you've earned this. To the life ahead, bring it on. Sophia Eleanor Ashford, age 29, September 22nd, 2023. I closed the journal and set it on my nightstand. Tomorrow there will be more work to do, more people to help, more life to live. But tonight, I'm going to sleep peacefully in my grandmother's house in this fortress I've built, safe and free and exactly where I'm meant to be. I said no to a proposal 2 years ago. I've been saying yes to myself ever since, and that makes all the difference.